One of the fiercest and most controversial drivers in NASCAR, Bubba Wallace, has received yet another warning about the upcoming season. After what happened in 2022, the co-owners of the team, Denny, Hamlin, and Michael Jordan, have given Wallace a clear indication that they won't tolerate some of the stuff that he used to get away with in the previous season. Given the fact that Wallace isn't known as a driver that can adapt easily to certain circumstances, this is definitely a scandal that is brewing in the back, and things could go from bad to worse for both sides. Last year, 23XI Racing had a pretty good season considering their star driver Kurt Busch had to sit out the rest of the season after Pocono due to injuries that prevented him from racing again. Wallace has been the pivotal piece for the team, and although he's been involved in a lot of scandals that have tested his temperament, and unfortunately for him, the test has failed, he's delivered some top-notch performances. During the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Wallace was passed by Larson in a maneuver that he could see any day of the season. But yet, Wallace thought that he was done dirty and went for the payback right away. After smashing the back of Larson's car, Wallace was knocked out as collateral damage, with Wallace pushing and shoving Larson in the aftermath. Rumors about him being penalized around $1 million from the owner, Michael Jordan, have emerged, and given the fact that this was around 50% of Wallace's salary, one would think that this would have brought a lot of sense into Wallace's mind. And for the remainder of the season, it seems like Wallace has learned from his mistake and has publicly apologized to Larson. In the offseason, Wallace decided to marry the love of his life, and now that everything points out to a successful season, Wallace doesn't have any shenanigans left in his arsenal if he wants to be the top-notch driver that 23XI hopes he'll be. That is why the co-owner of the team, Denny Hamlin, has further spoken about the expectations that he has from Wallace, and when talking about this matter, he said, "I mean, certainly, we expect him to make the playoffs. You know, Bubba did such a great job for, finishing top 10 and points for us racing in the playoffs. Although not many people know that the 45 car with Bubba driving it finished 10th in points last year in that playoff run, so he did a great job. Bubba's expectations are obviously attainable now that he set the bar high for a team like 23XI Racing last year. If he manages to keep the temper and the emotions under control, Hamlin believes that the number 45 racer will have an extremely well-paved path ahead of him, something that Wallace himself knows he's capable of and will definitely aim to achieve." Furthermore, Hamlin added, "Then Bubba, just what he's done over the last half of the year was he's exceeded my expectations of his talent level. Like, he started to perform where I thought he was, and then he started exceeding it, and I'm like, wow, he's really doing well." But what has Wallace done in the 2022 season that Hamlin was so impressed by? Obviously, he did not make it to the playoffs by himself, as Kurt Busch did not return for the playoffs due to the head injury, and Wallace was tasked with the number 45 car. Instead of running for the playoffs, Wallace was racing for the owner's playoffs, something that could bring down the motivation in a driver if it melds with his head too much. However, Wallace was more motivated than ever, scoring his second career win in Kansas. Unlike the first win that came at the Talladega Superspeedway in 2021, in the second one, he led the race and finished under regular circumstances without the aid of interventions in the form of race stoppages. And things seem to be going perfectly well for him. But the accident with Larson is something that has left a huge black mark on his career. And even though the penalty itself was a pretty mild one, Wallace has felt the consequences of his own action. Obviously, Wallace has a lot to work on in his portfolio, and anger issues are one of these problems too. While you would originally think that Wallace would continue to do stuff like he did against Larson, the fact that he is now married and is likely to calm down a bit in the upcoming seasons is something that we as fans shouldn't diminish. One of the reasons why Wallace wants to prove himself to the NASCAR world and to his co-owners is the current situation of Denny Hamlin, as the JGR racer currently faces a very uncertain future as a racer. We all know how important sponsorship is when it comes to racing money, and Hamlin is currently battling with his team on this front. It seems like JGR isn't ready to continue in the collaboration with FedEx, and the fact that Hamlin has been a part of the team for 18 years just goes to show that whenever money is in question, mercy isn't involved, and what has to be done just has to be done. Hamlin is likely entering his last season as a racer, and although the fact that he'll go down as one of the most successful drivers to not win a NASCAR Cup Series championship stands as it is, we cannot help but notice that his popularity has never been something he can brag about. Hamlin doesn't have a large fan base, and even though he races for one of the most popular teams in the world, and one of the most successful ones too, fame just hasn't been kind to him at all. Every race, it's noticeable that Hamlin doesn't have a huge fan support. and the merchandise with his name isn't the best-selling one or even near it at all. That is why Hamlin may be forced to retire from racing and concentrate on his managerial duties. After all, he is a co-owner of a team, and if he transfers his energy and his funds into the team more than he is currently doing, then we have no doubt that 23XI Racing is poised for success. That is why Wallace needs to be a bit careful as to how he acts as a driver and how he performs as one, because in the near future, there's going to be a lot of eyes put on him. Hamlin has joined Michael Jordan in co-owning the team again in 2020, and although he has an impeccable resume as a driver, the championship is still missing. This is something that he is very unlikely to achieve in the upcoming season. And while he was so close on many occasions, he just needed one last nudge in order to receive the ultimate crown from the sport. What goes against him winning at all in the 2023 season is the fact that the competitiveness level has increased a lot. And while nothing is known in NASCAR until the final race at Phoenix arrives, Hamlin's chances are slim to none compared to the other rivals. When talking about his future with JGR, the team that doesn't seem to invest too much in Hamlin and his future, the 42-year-old said, "Certainly, I've always wanted to finish my career at JGR, and I'm optimistic that will be the case. There will be a time when my attention will be more needed as a team owner than a driver, but it's going to be on my terms and when I want it to happen, and when I think it needs to happen. But I don't foresee ownership expediting my retirement. I think that my retirement will be a totally independent decision, regardless of where we're at with the race team." Obviously, the fact that he's given such a statement for Bubba Wallace goes to show that Hamlin has likely thought more about managing the 23XI Racing team than winning a championship with JGR. Yes, no one is taking away the incredible talent that this driver has, and he's picked up 48 wins and 614 starts in his rich 18-year resume, and the fact that he's finished 5th in 2022 just goes to show that he still has it in himself. But pressure is another thing that you need to think about when performances like this happen. Obviously, Hamlin will have to perform under huge pressure if the deal with JGR does not go through, and that is definitely something that can take a toll on a NASCAR driver. So that is why he could switch his energy from managing Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick from 2023 on. With that being said, what do you think about Bubba Wallace and the warning that he's received from Hamlin? Do you think that the number 45 car driver will fail to perform in the upcoming period? Let us know in the comments below.